You're listening to The Times. Go to thetimes.co.uk.
Your subscription to The Times and The Sunday Times now comes with access to every Barclays Premier League goal. Refresh your app, choose your team, accept notification, and you're away. All with our award-winning commentary, opinion, and insights. Every goal, every game, everywhere. The Times and The Sunday Times, now with goals.
Hello and welcome to The Game, live from the Freemasons' Arms in London. Now, 150 years ago, the laws of the game were agreed in this very room, and now, ever since, they've been subject to weekly disagreement around the world, and one day they will eventually get them right. I'm Jim Proudfoot, here to celebrate both the new season and our new Goals app, where you can get every goal, every game, everywhere. Just consider me a more history, more West Country, and less expensive version of Gab Marcotti. Fixing the first time round. Tonight we're going to answer some essential questions like, do Arsenal have a transfer policy? Is Stuart Downing at West Ham to provide service or silver service? And after a plucky start to the season, by how many points are Crystal Palace going to be relegated? As we're in the capital, we'll turn our focus slightly towards the London clubs, but as we're in the capital and not too far from Surrey, I'm sure the likes of Manchester United and Liverpool will also be on the agenda as well. Let me welcome my esteemed panel. Please put your hands together for Times Chief Football Correspondent Ollie Kay, Football Editor Tony Evans, and columnist and Irish legend Tony Cascarino. Welcome, gents. Let's begin then. And we're going to start tonight's show focusing on what's going on in North London. Spurs and Arsenal spent the last 3-4 years being pretty evenly matched, but they are having very different summers, obviously. Spurs spent big, although they may be selling a star, and Arsenal have just been painfully quiet. Ollie, I'll start with you. Would you rather, at this moment, be AVB or Arsene Wenger?
Very good question. I think probably Wenger's closer to retirement, isn't he, by some distance, so that's probably quite appealing. No, I would say AVB would be. I mean, if it wasn't for the Bale fact, if it wasn't for the fact that Bale is seemingly on his way, I mean, you would be delighted to be AVB and the business that they've done this summer. There's been, as you say, so little between them the last 2 seasons, or 3 seasons. And yet Arsenal just don't seem to be doing what's necessary to kick on, not only to try and catch up with the teams above them, but to keep Spurs at bay. Painfully quiet is right, and I just think there's going to be nothing to choose between them again this season. It's going to be a cigarette paper type thing.
Let's just have a very quick show of hands. How many people think that Arsenal will finish above Tottenham this season? So that's probably just a little bit less than 50%, 40%. I'm guessing, Tony, you didn't put your hands up, not through apathy, I'm hoping, but because you think that Tottenham will be the higher.
Well, every year I keep thinking Tottenham are going to succeed Arsenal and go above them, and strangely enough, Arsenal catch them. I do think I'm really suspicious about the Bale transfer. I can't get my head around it, because 85 million for a player, I can't believe Daniel Levy would not have just bit the hands off. We know he's a tremendous player. He certainly is, and Tony wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago about how ludicrous the amount of money was. A guy that's got half the goals of what Ronaldo and Messi has got. Yeah, he's an incredible talent, we know that. But he has had a big disruption to Tottenham, and if you take away his goals, and let's not forget, I checked the other day, Clint Dempsey, not a major player for Tottenham, got 7 goals. So there's nigh on 30 goals that have gone from Tottenham this season, or from last season. So you're looking at them thinking, well, okay, they've made a couple of transfers, and they've made some really good ones, and there's a lot resting on Soldado to work. I think Defoe will get you 10 and 15 goals a year, every year. He's nearly guaranteed. Not really a certain starter. More from Aaron Lennon. I always think Aaron Lennon, for me, he's got everything that Walcott can do. And where Walcott in the last year or two has found a bit of a predator instinct as a player, finds himself a goal. And I think that's where Aaron Lennon's got to get to. Then Bailey and Sandro in Midland midfield, 0 goals. That's, for Tottenham fans, there's no doubt, there's no goals. You know, they're not a midfield that you think is going to get 5-10 goals. They're just not there. So I still have my concerns about. They've done some great business, and I think some really good players. They've still got to fit it together. Where Arsenal, he hasn't done it. He will. He's got 70 million at his disposal. Now, unless he wants to pay a huge tax bill, because unfortunately at football clubs, you pay tax bills. If you want to pay corporation tax on your 70 million, they are not going to do that.
How many years, though, have we heard about this mythical Arsenal 70 million? We hear it again and again, don't we?
I think stadium tones made a big difference. Now they've got to a stage where they can really be competitive.
I think it was 2009 when I first heard the 70 million, when they said, the stadium's in a state where we've got a war chest now, we've got 70 million, you keep hearing it, and they never spend it. The interesting thing about Arsenal is the bidding lower than the price that people are asking. I mean, they were told by John Henry, Gazidis was told that they wouldn't sell Suarez at that level, and yet they still make the 35 million bid, the 40 million bid, the 40 million a pound. It begins to look like posturing. Go out and buy someone.
Well, they missed out on Higuain. They missed out even on Mark Schwarzer. It gets to the stage. So far, they have bought players who have played 24 senior games in their career. And that's the sum total.
And was it 12 players have left Arsenal permanently, and about 7 have gone out on loan. And they brought 1 in. It's like an amazing stat where you're thinking that squad has been depleted. It really has. Not in the actual first 11, 12, 15 players, it's not. But you've got to have more than what they've got. And I still think there's a lot of good things there. I can't believe if we sit here by September the 2nd that Arsenal haven't done some business. I'll be absolutely shocked. When was he bought the Mertesacker, and he bought 4 in about a week?
But that was a couple of years ago.
Panic buying though, isn't it? Ben Ayoun on the last day. Oh, that'll work.
When they did Arteta and Mertesacker and Ben Ayoun and Park Chu-young, remember him? No. They got 4 or 5 that week, and yes, it was massive panic buying. It was proper trolley dash stuff, and yet I think that those buys were what got them into the Champions League that season. They were in a horrible state going into that season, and those buys worked. And I think what they need to do is just be a bit more realistic and get a certain quality of player. Wenger's always very good at saying this thing of we need top quality to improve. They do need top quality to improve, but they also need they just need quality to improve on what they've already got. I mean,
one of the problems is when Wenger first arrived, he knew markets and understood markets that no one else in this country did. And when everyone else caught up, I mean, there's nowhere else to go. Why aren't they buying improving players? Players who are not overly expensive but have got potential. Because some of the players, I mean, the Arteta thing, I don't get. He plays him as a defensive midfielder. Arteta's not a defensive midfielder.
He is by Arsenal standards.
One thing that's I think when you look at Arsenal and what they've got at their disposal, if they could add, and they certainly will. They've got a formidable group of players. I still think there's 15, 20 players there. At centre-half position, I thought they defended very, very well. Second half of the season, they were superb. I can't believe that by September 2nd, no business. I really can't see that happening.
Here's the problem I have. Good ends. You finish in top 4, and that's fine. And Wenger is he's straightforward about it. He says he's not bothered about winning cups. As long as he finishes in the top 4, well, that's fine. Let your money build up, count your money, but it's a load of crap, really, isn't it? Football's about winning things. And if you do have a war chest and you've got the money to spend it.
But hasn't that been proven this season by the fact that Suarez has been wanted to go from Liverpool to Arsenal? He has been wanted to go from a club that aren't in Europe to get into the Champions League.
Yeah, of course, people.
I would rather have.
But he's only wanted to go to Arsenal because it's a stepping stone.
Well, yeah.
He would have had the same problem. And the reason he's wanted to go to Arsenal is not only Champions League football, it's that his basic at Liverpool is 71 grand a week, and he thinks he could quadruple it.
Just on one thing, if you look at the history of football over the last 3 or 4 decades, going back to the great Liverpool teams, the Man United of Fergie, when they bought players, they overpaid. You had to overpay. When Sir Alex Ferguson bought Roy Keane at 3.3 million, Gary Pallister at 2.3 million, and a good host of other players, all overpaid at the time. We thought the fees were too much. You have to do that. Man City had to do that to become the club they did. They overpaid. Now, okay, we might look and say, oh, well, it's 25 million for Tevez, it was too much. But they had a plan of what attracts another player. You have to do it. Liverpool did it all through the 80s. They overpaid on so many players. Now, Chelsea have won the league, Man City have won the league, Man United have won the league, and they've all done a similar thing. They've overpaid. Now, Arsenal are at a stage, well, if you've got the money and you want Suarez, just go and pay 50 million.
Well, Arsenal are almost like the reverse of Man City. Man City are outside, the elite, so they pay wages that were way too much for players that got them over the hump into the elite, and then they get rid of them and get better players. Arsenal have underpaid and they're sliding down. I think Arsenal could be outside the top 4 this year.
Well, they really could, because there's been no. They've made it by the skin of the teeth the last 3 seasons, and the margin for error is very, very small. It went down to the final day last season and could well do again. But I would be tempted to say, unless Spurs keep Bale or get somebody else in, I would be very, very slightly tempted to go with Arsenal rather than Spurs.
I think the money they're offering for Bale, you've got to bite the hands off. if they're going to actually pay it, Real Madrid, you bite the hands off.
Do you believe it, Tone? Do you actually believe? I mean, do you think it was a president? We know that Spain works with presidential elections and the way they do their business. They actually have really physically gone for that offer. Because I have my serious doubts. I just think that deal would have happened at 85 million. That's way too much.
No, I think Levy and. I think Levy thinks he can squeeze more out of them. I mean, I think there's a madness at work in Real Madrid's policy where they got this idea: buy a megastar, 50% of the image rights go to them, and they can actually make money. But the thing is, Bale's not a megastar. He's barely known outside Britain. I mean, not barely known, but he's not Ronaldo. Ronaldo. 80 million, yeah, you pull the trigger on the Ronaldo deal, yeah, he'll sell your shirts everywhere, right across the world. Bale's not going to sell shirts in the Hispanic world. So, I mean, I think it's
a bad time to try and crack the Welsh market, isn't it? Room time then.
So, it's a game of poker, as far as Levy's concerned. Why take 85 million if you might be able to take 95 million?
I can't get my head round the fact that he wouldn't do a deal. You have to do a deal at such a large sum of money. He's unsettled. Look, I think I'm a bit disagree with Tony. I think he's a fabulous talent, and he moved on to another level last season. I watched him get goals. I watched him destroy Inter Milan 2 years ago, where Maicon apparently was the best right back in the world. Gareth Bale comes against him and absolutely slaughters him. He becomes an average right back pretty much straight afterwards.
He's a very, very good player.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. He's no Ronaldo. He's no Messi.
No, I think there is a line in between. But 85 million, seriously, you look at it, and I just think that it would have happened. I really do believe it. If they've seriously gone 85 million, it'd have happened.
Okay, let's wrap this up very quickly then. One word answer: Gareth Bale. Is he going to be a Tottenham player on September the 2nd when the transfer window shuts?
No.
But maybe.
No, but maybe. Hedge your bets. Okay, let's move on and talk about Chelsea and Jose Mourinho, the special one, now the happy one, and perhaps even the quiet one. Believe that when I see it. But Chelsea have been very quiet in the transfer market this summer. Not Marcel Marceau-like Arsenal, but only a few new faces. And for Mourinho, perhaps that is a little bit surprising. Now, what do you read into the return of Jose? It was a spiritual homecoming, Tony, that it was always going to happen, or is it just a remarriage of convenience?
Oh, very much convenience. Jose showed his knickers to United, didn't he? And they didn't want him. Roman wanted Guardiola, didn't get him, and they've got back together. And you know what? It's a very different situation than it was 9 years ago when he come. He'll have less control over the budget, the transfer budget, and the players they bring in. And one of the things that went largely unnoticed in the week that Jose come back to Chelsea was the elevation of Abramovich's PA, Marina. I won't attempt to pronounce her second name because it's Russian, and there is an injunction forbidding me to pronounce foreign names. But she was elevated to the board. Now she's the gatekeeper. To get to Abramovich, you have to go through her. I pronounce a foreign name. But she was elevated to the board, and she's just one of the many checks on Jose's power. You know, he hasn't got a squad that he likes. I bet he looks at one matter and thinks, you know what? Oh, I'd get you out of this club in a minute. I mean, I feel the same way a little bit about Matter. I'm not a fan. But, you know, the thing is, he wants a counter-attacking team. He wants to move the ball fast. The so-called three amigos, Oscar, Matter and Hazard, when they get the ball in the midfield and slow it down, you know, this is not the sort of team he likes. It could go belly up really, really quickly for Chelsea.
Cass?
Wow.
It could go belly up, but of course the one man they want to sign is Wayne Rooney.
Yeah.
A natural fit. Irrespective of whether you think he's going to move, is he a natural fit for Chelsea?
There's a legal letter that from Man United that forbids us, from Rooney's people actually, that forbids us mention Wayne Rooney and fit in the same phrase.
How many years ago, man? 5 years ago, I went to Vegas in the summer.
Did you?
Yeah, again, every year. Anyway, I go to Vegas and I bump into an accidentally Vinnie Jones, who I was with at Chelsea, and he had his marriage vows renewed. And he said to me, "Big man."
To you?
No. Anyway, to cut a long story short, he had a bit of a do round the pool, and Wayne Rooney was there. And I started talking to Wayne, started chatting to him about, you know, him as a player, fitness, and, you know, and I thought he achieved a lot. He looked a really phenomenal striker 5 years ago. Got out his fags, after a puff of a fag or two.
Sniff some glue.
And doesn't really matter. Loads of people enjoy a bit of a pint and a bit of fun, and I don't see too much wrong with that. But I did notice over that period of time that he did, and I just didn't spend that much time, that he did love enjoying his break, his time. And for a number of times, I think that Wayne goes in and out of fitness too often in a game that doesn't allow you to do that anymore. The athletes are so fit at the very highest level; they reach their peak. Just in every aspect, you can't be in and out like he is. I watched him against England, for Algeria, World Cups, and sometimes I think he's like probably all of us here. If we put our hands up, you'd go, Wayne Rooney on his day is a fantastic player. He really is. I don't disagree with that. But there's days that I see him and I come away thinking, you're average.
So
That's
a terrible indictment for someone so good to say you're average.
But isn't there a certain thing going on here with Wayne Rooney? Ericsson told us he was the white Pele, when in fact he was just a really, really good player. You know, well, I think we've oversold him a little bit. And he's good. He's not that great.
Do you know what I think about Rooney? When you look at how good he was at 17, 18,
yeah.
and the type of player he was at 17, 18, and you think, well, his decision making was already fantastic, strength fantastic. He was playing like he'd been there for years. It's not, with hindsight, it's not really very clear where the improvement was going to come from. He wasn't suddenly going to bulk up. He wasn't suddenly going to become a cleverer player. He wasn't suddenly going to improve his technique.
There's been other issues, Ollie, hasn't there, as well? I don't want to name drop here because I don't want to sound like, but for a strange coincidence, my missus's daughter, not my daughter, she's obviously my stepdaughter, goes to the same school as Bobby Charlton's grandchildren. And I was with Bobby and I started talking to him about Wayne, and because so many people have this conversation about Wayne, we do now. And he said to me, do you know what? The biggest problem for Wayne, you can't tell him anything. He doesn't want to learn. You can't tell him. And again, that's a big problem because you always learn. We learn today, and as a player, you never stop experiences, learning to become better. Great players always want to learn and learn more to become a better player. And I think that's big. I think Wayne hasn't listened. He's had really bad advice.
There's a lot of that generation, the so-called golden generation, who didn't listen though. Michael Owen didn't listen to Rafa. You know, even Steven Gerrard, he didn't listen to Rafa particularly.
Frank Lampard listened, didn't he?
Frank Lampard listened, and my view on Lampard is he plays to about 95% of his potential, and you know, and that's pretty good. I think Stephen plays to about 75% because he's never thought about his game and slowed things down. And I think that the so-called golden generation,
we're not good listeners.
Not good listeners. I mean, basically, how shall I put it? I've written they're the most selfish bunch of stiffs ever to represent England.
So
hold back.
From that selfish bunch of stiffs, then, Wayne Rooney. What happens? You basically have come up with a polite way, Cass, of saying that if you were Mourinho, you wouldn't touch him.
No,
he's not the answer for Chelsea. Notwithstanding the fact that Fernando Torres has never fired there, you still wouldn't go for Rooney.
Well, if you put the whole package together, and if you have to go, well, wages, transfer fee, input as a player, you have to look at all the angles of what can he really give you. And on his day, he can give you all of that.
Could Jose make him listen?
Sorry, Tom?
Could Jose make him listen?
Maybe he's already, you know, look, contact is made all the time in football. For as much as you don't read, there's many managers at the very highest level who've spoke to players on a regular basis. I could tell you a whole host of managers that chat to players, phone them, and we all know that it happens all the time, and I'd be amazed if there hasn't been contact made from Chelsea, from someone, and even Jose. Because you do, you have to do your utmost to get the best players you want. Would I take him? What's your question, Jim? No, I wouldn't. I think there's other options around.
Okay, what constitutes, Ollie, a successful season for Chelsea?
For Chelsea,
what's par for them?
Well, if you look at the past, I think 3 seasons since Ancelotti's first season, they've not even made a real challenge for the league. They've been a really fantastic cup team, particularly in Europe, but they've won the FA Cup a couple of times, and but they've been nowhere in the league. Frank Lampard was saying at the end of last season, whoever comes in, and I think he knew damn well who it was going to be, they have got to get out of this habit of sort of going into themselves when they have a bad result, which always seems to happen about October, November. And they always have this bad period. And he said that when Mourinho was here, we never had a bad period. Ever since, we've always had a bad period in a season. They need to get out of that. I think Mourinho is the type of manager who would probably get a team to snap out of that. But they have not been close to challenging these last few seasons. I think they will challenge. I think they will definitely challenge, particularly if they get a striker in, whether it's Rooney or not. Eto'o would be very interesting. I think that's a really good squad. I don't think it's a really good squad for Mourinho. I think it's not the type of squad Mourinho likes. If you look at the defenders, if you look at the defensive midfielders, if you look at the front, you compare it with the front 3 that he had when he was there first time. Drogba and Duff and Robben. He worked fantastically well as a 4-3-3. And you compare that with the options he's got now, which is no width, yet it's fantastic tippy-tappy players. And I say that in a really complimentary way. And it's a striker that Torres, who he will not believe in. And it just doesn't look like a Mourinho squad to me.
No, at all. It drove Rafa wild that Oscar Hazard and Mata. He says, stay out wide, and they just come in. They all want to be number 10s. Mourinho will take that. I think there's more chance that Chelsea will have a different manager next May than winning the league.
Wow.
Well, I would also say I do expect them to challenge. I think they were 13 points behind last season.
20 United.
20?
20 on the title.
So it was 20-something the season before, but I think they will be extremely close to United. I think it will be.
They might be extremely close to United.
United and City. I think that top 3 is almost inseparable, but I would not bank on Chelsea being the one.
Okay, let's turn our attentions to what's happening at the other end of the table. I think everybody. I think. Let's have a look. Anybody in the room make a case for Crystal Palace staying up? No. What about Hull? No. Okay.
Whoa. Yeah, I can.
Crystal Palace.
I can make a case for Crystal Palace staying up. I mean, I can say Newcastle, Sunderland. I can say Hull. I can say Cardiff.
You could have said default.
You know what? The reality, people are queuing up to go down. And there's like, I think all three promoted teams have the opportunity to stay up. I think the bottom half of the table will be again like last season. It'll be really poor, and people won't get a lot of points. I think you look at it, and there are teams that are not very good. I mean, some teams have done really well. I mean, you look at Norwich, and you look at Southampton, and you look at Swansea and the way they've bought this summer, and they've done really well. And I think they'll at the top echelon. Everyone else, aside from that, I think there's a real live chance of them going down. And if I was Palace, I'd be bullish about staying up.
They've spent £7 million, most of it on Dwight Gale, who is unproven, but doesn't get many bad reviews. When you speak to every level he's played at, he has been able to deliver. I mean, it's a big step up, Cass.
Saw Dwight Gale at Bishop Stortford. Real live wire. Got great ability, quick feet. Very similar to the way Ian Wright sort of came into the game.
His movement's great.
Yeah, he's got fantastic movement. Like you said, Jim, hell of a risk, expecting this guy's going to deliver. Their forward line's going to be, their forwards they've got at the club are Stephen Dobby, right? Okay, journeyman in the Championship. Marion Shamak, right? They took him. I can't believe they took Marion Shamak. I don't know for what reason, because I saw him at Bordeaux and watched him and was a bit indifferent. Gets a move to Arsenal. Okay, does a little cameo every now and again, but then went to West Ham and we didn't really see him. It's a strange. And then got Kevin Phillips at 39 years old. And they've got Dwight. So they've got Dwight Gale, a 39-year-old, and two lads that haven't really done anything. So I can understand why they went for Darren Bent, and it was obviously he must have been devastated that they didn't get that deal through, because if Palace don't sign a forward, you can't rely on a 22-year-old who's played non-league football 2 years ago, who's then gone to Dagenham and Redbridge and done really well, ended up going to Peterborough and found himself at Crystal Palace in the Premiership and expect to go, he's going to get us 20 goals.
Granted, but they have signed 4 forwards this summer. So,
Jim, I would argue that they're not 4 forwards of quality that's going to give you a chance. I would say that he was so desperate to get Bent that he knows that he must sign someone of importance to give them a much better chance. Because obviously they've got the lad Murray, who's injured, and still a long-term injury, so it's a problem. But they need, if Palace can have any chance, they need to add again.
I think what we can say they have got is when they're losing, which we probably expect them to be doing more often than not, they will always have players they could put on. They will always have a goal scorer from the bench, but that is not really a great formula. I was just going to ask you, Cass, when you saw Gale at Bishop Stortford, did he just stand out like a player who could make the Premier League?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
John Steele, I know quite well, who's now at Luton, who's at Dagenham manager, said to me about this kid. Have a look at him. He said, I've seen something a bit special here, and I looked at him and we chatted about him afterwards and said the lad's got a lot of great ability to movement, seeing things, a bit what we said, like you see a forward that once the pass comes he's gone and he sees it early and he's already trying to take a shot. He made a big impact at Peterborough from Dagenham. They took a bit of a risk. Ferguson looked at him and thought, yeah, I'll give him a go, and he immediately jumped to that level. And when players do that, you see that every now and again. They get thrown into a level that you think, not sure, they come in and they're fine. And he looked like, I hope that that's the case for him in a Premiership.
I'll be honest, he told me about him, so, I didn't see him myself. But, the thing is, the Ian Wright comparison is good. He never lets a centre-half settle. No. He's always moving.
His dad's a former player,
I love that in a striker.
So you talked about Darren Bent as well, going to Fulham. How important was that for Fulham? How would you survey what's coming up for them?
Well, I mean, if Darren's going to be the player that we know he can get goals...
it's a big if, though.
But exactly. That's why no one wanted to pay the permanent fee. Fulham have took a £2 million loan on the lad. So if he's the player, he's 29, he's got a bit of a point to prove. And I always like that in players because you have to sometimes match that challenge.
How do you think it'll work with Berbatov?
Berbatov and Bent. and Tarapt and Ruiz and yeah.
Going to win lots of away games, aren't they? That lot?
Yeah, exactly.
Did they all have me t-shirts on? If they scored?
The thing is, but Ben will be making runs all the time, won't he? Berbatov
Won't run.
will never be making runs. They're not going to get in each other's way, are they? So Berbatov might be match made in co-op. I don't know.
I think they might just have enough to with the home form. But one of the worst performances I've ever seen in my life was last year, Fulham away at Anfield on a very, very cold 5 kickoff. And the worst thing was they were 3-0 down, and about 2 minutes to go, Berbatov got the ball just round the halfway line, and he beat Agger, and he did that I'm really good. I can do this any time I want. And I'm a Liverpool fan, but I was jumping up and I was like, Berbatov, I hate you. If I was a Fulham fan, I would have been on the pitch. Actually, I wouldn't, because there'd be a ban and all. You know what I mean?
I do think that I look at, we're talking at candidates, and I looked at Hull, and I'd never known that a team to get promoted, and they didn't have a player that get double digits goals. I found that amazing. You look at stats all the time, and stats can be misleading. Jim, you work with them every day. And when I saw they got promoted and not one striker had got, or one player had got 10 goals.
But, some of the great sides have done that. The Everton sides in the mid-80s, they got goals from midfield everywhere. The one with Andy Gray and Sharp. And they were brilliant. The next season, Lineker come in and scored 40, and he won nothing. It was great.
Yeah.
But no, I actually think Hull, out of the three who have come up, and I looked at them last season. I didn't think they would go. I didn't think they would come up. I didn't think they looked like one of the top teams in the division. But I think they've bought quite well. I think Huddleston and Livermore and El Hamadi and McGregor and I think they're decent Premier League standard players.
I'm not sure about their forwards. I don't see.
No,
Jay Simpson is.
I would expect them to go in for.
He's tried as well.
Yeah.
He's tried to get forward.
Yeah, I mean, they've got, looking at the forwards, they've got George Boyd, Yannick Sagbo, who were the best one in the world, don't know an awful lot about, having played for Evian in France last year. Danny Graham, who didn't score for Sunderland. I think it could be a long, hard season. Okay, let's finish this part then. Cass, who are your three that are going down?
Crystal Palace, Hull. I think they're certainly, and I have real fears about Stoke, because as much as we look at what Tony Pulis and the way they played, that was fundamentally the reason why they stayed up. They were a team that got goals from set pieces and were in your face and made it difficult. And I just can't see Stoke. We talked about goals. Crouch and Walters were 8 and 7 last year. I think they got one player from midfield who got a goal. You look at their old Glenn Whelan. He played 35, 40 games, no goals, and Zombie had 1 goal. And reading Stoke midfield. Everington 30 appearances, 1 goal. It really read bad for them. And I think that information is important, because who's going to get the goals to keep Stoke up? And if they're going to play a new style of football, would you really think that Peter Crouch and Walters are going to be them type of players?
Ollie, have they got the players? I mean, Mark Hughes has inherited that set of players. A few have gone. He's only brought 3 in. Can they play any other way? And what used to happen when the scouts and agents would speak to Stoke and say, we've got a player for you, okay? And the first question, is he 6'2" or over? And if the answer was no, they weren't interested. Now, that's the set of players that Mark Hughes is inheriting. Whatever you think about Mark Hughes' managerial ability, he can't turn that lot into a fantastic team of fancied hands overnight. So he's got to play the same way. Can they play the same way as effectively under Hughes as they did under Hughes?
Well, if you watch Mark's Blackburn and Mark's Wales team, and certainly Mark's Fulham team, they did play quite in-your-face football.
Yeah.
They might not have been as direct as Stoke, but I think he's got to try and a formula in between. You've got to try and change it slightly, but it's a big ask for them, really is, Jim, really is.
Okay, so you're going for Palace, Hull and Stoke. Ollie?
At risk of being terribly predictable, I'm going to go for Palace, Hull and Cardiff. I know it's terrible to go for the newly promoted teams, but even worse, I could actually see the 3 relegated teams coming up, and that's not a lack of imagination. I've thought about it, and just since you mentioned it just now. And no, I think Cardiff were the best of those teams in the Championship last season, but it's not a great team. It's not a team full of Premier League quality. I think Malky Mackay is great, but I just get a feeling with Cardiff that it's going to be a circus. I distrust any club with an owner like the Cardiff owners, and I could see him being really rash. I think the transfers have been a bit strange. Kulka 8 million, this like Cornelius 7 or 9 million or something like that.
Gary Liddell.
Exactly.
A lot of money, £11 million. Got sent off 5 times last season.
And they've spent an awful lot of money on players who, to my mind, aren't going to improve them dramatically. Mm-hmm. I think what Hull have done is probably spread it a bit thinner.
What about Bellamy, Ollie? Do you think of, a strange year in the Championship last year, now coming back to the Premiership? I think he might find something again?
Bellamy will do what he always does, which is excel against his former teams, and
that is most.
I know. That's I was going to say. If he gets a goal against all of them, that's it's 12 goals. No. He will be great on his day. He will find. I mean, he found it hard dropping down a season and a half ago. I think he will find it hard coming back up again, and he's not getting any younger. I think he will have some exceptional games, probably in front of the TV cameras against big clubs that he's played for, but. I think he'll find it going tough.
Stoke, Newcastle and Hull.
And Newcastle on the basis of transfer policy, Joe Kinnear.
Yes, Joe Kinnear. It's a car crash waiting to happen. Purdue, it wouldn't surprise me if by the end of if at the end of October Purdue's on his way. It's just a mess up there. And you had not last season, the season before. You think just when you think, oh, Newcastle, they're running that like a proper football club, and then they don't. It could be carnage there. I think Hull. I mean, I'd love to see Cardiff go down, because I think because lunatic owner who'll go, Hull are going to call themselves the Tigers. Well, we're definitely going to be the Dragons. Well, you know what? I hope you all go to hell with your stupid names.
Tony, do you know there's a plan to go to Cardiff for one of these? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You going to volunteer for that one?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. And maybe we should have it in Swansea.
Yeah. And Stoke. Let's face it, it's a mess there. And, when you've got a mess, what you do, you call for Mark Hughes.
Well, it'll be interesting to see who's right. I would imagine that everybody's going to come up with at least one. I'm sure that the 3 that go down will be amongst the 5 or 6 that have been named. That's it for part 1. Fill your glasses, gentlemen, and we will be back in about 10 minutes or so. Welcome back to The Game, the podcast from The Times, where you can now get goals, every goal, every game, everywhere. I'm Jim Proudfoot. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Ollie Kay, Tony Evans and Tony Cascarina. Now, for this section, we're going to take questions from the audience, and I'd like to start by inviting Dave Gargan to take the floor, take the microphone and ask you a question.
I'm a bit of a despairing Manchester United fan at the moment. Because we actually haven't signed anybody and it looks pretty bleak at the moment. So I just wanted to see from you guys what you thought of who was the best person to sign. Our central midfield is woefully weak. Judging from pre-season, everyone was kind of walking through the middle without kind of much going on really. So I want to see who is the best person to sign. Is Fellaini a viable option, or are there other people you guys think would be the best people to go with?
Okay, Dave, thank you very much. Ollie, let me throw that one at you.
I think they will sign Fellaini. Wait to be proved wrong, but is he a good option? Well, I don't think he's the ideal fit, and I think if he was the ideal fit, they would have signed him in July. He'd have been signed and sealed weeks ago. Fellaini is. I think Fellaini's a really interesting case because he's clearly very good. He's clearly got a lot of what United don't have, and yet if he went to that team and if he was playing alongside Carrick, that to me doesn't seem like the right kind of balance for a midfield, and certainly not with the way United play. So I think whether they get Fellaini or not, I think they need another one in midfield. I mean, the names that they've been going for are Fabregas and Thiago and Modric and people like that, and they are exactly the right, in my opinion, right quality, the right profile, the right skill set, but they're not getting any of them. So they need to look around. They need to look at Portugal. They need to look at Eastern Europe. They need to look at Brazilian players in Ukraine, and the ones that they're not getting, they need to just lower their sights. They need to get out of this Arsene Wenger mindset that only the best will do. They've run out of options. They're running out of options anyway. If they can't get a Fabregas or a Modric or a Thiago, and Thiago's already gone, they need to get somebody in, because that midfield, what is it now? Carrick, Anderson, Giggs, remind me, Powell, Cleverley. They won the league in spite of that midfield. In fact, in spite of the wingers, they won that league by the strength of Van Persie and the strength of what Ferguson created in terms of the squad. And if they don't get some proper quality midfielders in, and maybe some, one or two elsewhere, then they'll struggle. I actually think that they will win the league, because I think they will get those players in, but they're going to have to lower their sights and accept that the bar at Manchester United is not set as high as it was.
It's a big problem for United.
I think this is a complete myth, this idea that people are not choosing United because it's Moyes rather than Ferguson. United have never signed players from Barcelona, Real Madrid. I mean, Jordi Cruyff. But there's well, yeah, exactly. No, but I mean, Thiago, was Thiago ever going to go to United when he had Guardiola wanting him at Bayern Munich? Was Fabregas ever going to be any more likely to leave Barcelona?
That's not the sort of players I'm talking about, who are having doubts about going to play for Moyes. The fact is that, as you say, that's more a Woodward thing. He's in the wrong market, dealing with the wrong clubs. And the other thing I'd say is, if you always, you got to be careful from buying from the likes of Barcelona or the likes of Milan, because when you come away, count your fingers.
Dave, I'm guessing that we've not done an awful lot to alleviate your exasperation, really.
Not much.
How do you see it going then? Where are you going to finish this year?
My head says that Chelsea are going to win the league, just because of the Mourinho factor. But I really think, having watched United in pre-season, we really struggled in centre of the park. And people like Fabregas and Ozil, who have been linked with today, they're not going to save us in the middle of the park. They're going to create goals, but they're not going to help us at the back. So I'm a little bit worried going into the season, to be honest, and I think Swansea could cause some problems tomorrow.
Dave, thanks very much for your question. Leave your shoelaces on the side on the way out, just in case. Matthew Baldwin, next up, please.
With seemingly everyone enjoying Wednesday night's England versus Scotland game, and with hooliganism seemingly on the decrease, do you think that the home international championship should be brought back as a way of qualifying for major tournaments?
Tony?
I don't think it should be a way of qualifying for major tournaments, but I do think they should play each other. I mean, it's fun, isn't it? Playing the Scots and England playing the Scots. And it just struck me as how outrageous it was that the last time they played was 1999. It's and it was an enjoyable game. It gave a new sort of level to the friendly. I mean, could you imagine if it was someone like, I don't know, so let's say Romania would have come to Wembley on Wednesday night, and you would have seen, I don't know, 263 substitutions, and no one would have cared. The fact that in a friendly, the raft of substitutions come so late told you there was a little bit of an element about it, and it's entertainment, and that's what we want from football, entertainment. So yeah, I think they should come back, and I think it's, as you say, hooliganism is no longer an issue. It's long been, it's long been sort of disposed of in many ways. So yeah, I'd love it to see it back. I'd love to see them play. I would love to bring in Ireland into a whole five-team home international, and you could do it, on every 2 years on On non-tournament seasons?
Far be it from me to do my Marcotti devil's advocate impression, but there are two potential problems. If we played Romania the other night, they at least would have given England more of the kind of test that England are going to face in the 4 remaining qualifiers.
Without doubt.
So have the FA gone, oh, we're 150 years old, aren't we? Great. And then, tossed away an opportunity to have a meaningful friendly, in inverted commas. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from the game. The spectacle was hugely entertaining. It was fantastic. The other thing is, of course, everyone goes, we play far too many international friendlies, and I'm sure there is not a single club manager that thinks that the August friendly should stay in. But if we're going to reintroduce the home nations cast, then it's just going to put more pressure on the calendar.
Well, first of all, the home nation revolves around England. Because if anyone had watched Ireland play Wales, there was about 400 people there. Yeah. So there was not a massive interest with Ireland playing Wales or Wales playing Scotland or Scotland playing Ireland. It all revolves around England.
So what you're saying is England-Scotland, just have England-Scotland every year. And
no, I'd love England to play them all, but the others playing each other doesn't seem to really attract much attention.
I think they were a little bit interested in Ireland and that place, weird place, Wales.
Oh, Tony, it was. I tell you what, if the Beatles had played there, they'd have got a full house. But watching Ireland play Wales, and even I spoke to a lot of people back in my homeland,
Italy.
What? I didn't realise there were that many people in Crayford.
I spoke to a few people, and the lack of interest around the Ireland-Wales game, and it really brings the point to me. It's all around England. England have what was at Wembley the other night, 80,000, and everybody, and I can tell you this is just so true, from all the home nations, love to stuff England or have the opportunity to beat England, because we were like that. We always felt England want a pedestal put up here. We wanted to challenge England, and Scotland, and no doubt that was the way, and it's the same with Northern Ireland, Wales. So it's all about England. And that's why it's come back, because England have shown an interest in playing the game.
Having any kind of fixed thing in the calendar, whether it's every 2 years or whatever, I think it'd be counterproductive, particularly in view of the sort of technical, tactical aspect which you mentioned.
Matthew, thanks for your question. Let's speak to Paul Joyce next, please.
It's not actually my question. It's my mate Nick, so I'll let him ask it.
Evening, gents. My question was, sort of follows on quite nicely from what Ollie was just saying about international football. What is the feasibility and what are the implications of a Winter World Cup in Qatar? It just seems to me to be an issue that we're kind of being told it's going to happen, and yet I don't really know, why or who's sort of decided that. Do you know what I mean? It just seems to be something that's happening without any consultation, going on.
Yeah, no, I think it's a terrifying idea. People have lined up this week to say to oppose a Winter World Cup in Qatar, and then FIFA come back and say these people are advocating a summer, the Premier League, etc., are advocating a Summer World Cup in Qatar. How ridiculous! Now that is completely disingenuous. It's completely insane to say that people from the Premier League, Bundesliga, La Liga, etc., are advocating a Summer World Cup in Qatar. Everybody realises a Summer World Cup in Qatar would be ridiculous for so many reasons, because of the temperature, because of everything. I think what the leagues are saying is there should not be a Winter World Cup in Qatar. They're not saying there should be a Summer World Cup in Qatar. The only people who say there should be a World Cup in Qatar are FIFA, and that FIFA executive committee from which I can't remember, half a dozen or a dozen people have left in very mysterious circumstances since that World Cup vote. It's a completely inexplicable. Well, it's probably very easily explicable, but not. It's a completely unjustifiable decision, and it's a disgraceful decision because tiny country, the size of Kent, 50 degrees, no football passion. It's ridiculous.
But apart from that,
good air conditioning, very, very, very good air conditioning.
Yeah, and that's the point. I don't know whether anyone's seen a football game in Qatar. I have. What's interesting is it will be horrible for fans because the temperature's and there is no infrastructure there. But in terms of a Summer World Cup for the players, it'll be a doddle. I didn't believe in it. I went 2 years ago, wasn't it, for the Qatar versus Vietnam grudge match. I tell you, and I think we've seen Vietnam's mob. But I went down there and I went extremely sceptical, and the piece I wrote about it was certainly not positive. I believe they've sentenced me to 60 lashes when I go back. But I have to say, I stood on pitch side. The temperature had been 48 that day. We kicked off at 7 o'clock and it was still 42. And I stood pitch side and it was cool. There was air conditioning, huge air conditioning blowers. And I went and sat in my seat in the press box. And I was the only Western journalist there. In fact, there was only about 4 people there. And the air conditioning worked beautifully. And I thought, oh, you know, it might be a bit of a blag for the press box. But I walked around the ground into the other areas and it was cool. It really was. The problem was when I come out, there was no there was no transport. I walked up to the main road looking for a cab, couldn't find one. In the end, the car stopped and I was like, he goes, "You're looking for a cab?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "I'm a cab." And I had this vision of myself on like a homemade video with a green flag behind me saying, and like, well, I got in anyway, because I mean, you know, I needed to drink back at the hotel. But it will be horrible for fans. It's hot, it's horrible, there's no transport. But on the other hand, I spoke to someone who wasn't connected with the Qatari FA. And actually this disturbed me most in my whole trip there. It was someone tangential but was involved in football. And he had nothing but contempt for me, a bit like Hughes. But he honestly was dripping with contempt for football fans. And he said to me, I said, you know, in a World Cup, you want to go, you want to have a good time, you want to have a drink. And he said, we have enough money. He says, we will build a city on the edge of Doha. He said, where you can all go and we'll build a wall around it. He said, there you can have all the alcohol and horse you want. I still only want to drink, lads. And he said, and when you've gone, we'll knock it down and salt the earth. And I thought, and that to me was what sickened me most about it. They're not going to embrace us coming. They don't want us really there. They want it for their prestige.
But the argument that always comes up, and it's not an original line at all, but people say you can air condition a city, a stadium. You can't air condition a city. You can't air condition a country. It would be terrible for fans. It would be, people wouldn't be able to leave the hotel. But in fact, they wouldn't even be able to afford to get into the hotel because the hotels are all geared towards top-end tourism. I just think it's
the towns were paying for it. I live like a sheikh.
But you know, 2022. I mean, who knows what the future of newspapers is? But the newspapers must be terrified of a World Cup in Russia and a World Cup in Qatar. The price is going to be hiked up so high.
Well, Brazil will be the most difficult World Cup to cover ever.
And you know. That's without looking at it for individual fans. It's just ridiculous.
Very briefly then, any chance at all that it won't be in Qatar?
I hope it won't be, because I went there for the Brazil-England game in 2009. It's not. It's completely soulless. I don't know how many Qatari listeners we've got, and I apologise, but I think it's a completely soulless place.
What's amazing is they've got a souk there, and you go in there, and it looks like a Disneyfied version of Arabian Nights, and they built it about 10, 12 years ago, and it's air conditioned, and it looks ancient. It looks as if you've gone back 2,000 years. And they built it about 10 years ago. They can do anything with the money. They were talking about building a stadium on an island and sinking it afterwards. They've got all the money to do everything, but what I think I said at the time when I wrote it, I said it's like a trophy wife. You can see it's pretty, but there's no love there, and there's no love for the game in Qatar, and that's the biggest reason why the World Cup shouldn't be there. The World Cup should be in places where people care, where people love, and they want to go and see football.
Totally agree.
Absolutely.
I was going to say my greatest memories of World Cups were seeing 40,000 Irish fans turn up, seeing the Dutch fans, English fans all around tournaments in huge numbers. we played in Florida at 12 o'clock with Ireland. We played Mexico, 12 o'clock midday. It was about 42 degrees. And it was really like a match that had been fixed because we just, Steve Staunton's face was incredible. He was it's like a ghost watching Steve playing this heat, and he just couldn't do anything. It was just incredible. And I remember thinking, you know, who really does want the World Cup in Qatar? It's only going to be the Qatari Federation and FIFA. And it's all about, obviously the obvious is money. I just can't see it because, like Tony and Ollie have said, there is no love and passion for the game, and you have to earn the right. And they're being given it. They're being given it. No other reason, for financial reasons.
There is a precedent as well for taking World Cups off countries. Remember the Mexico '86 was supposed to be in Colombia. Everyone forgets that, and they took it off them because they said the television infrastructure, the media infrastructure wasn't good enough, and everyone forgets that. In the FIFA Congress of 2015, it wouldn't surprise me if they tell Qatar to go shove it.
Oh, I hope you're right. I really do. Thanks for your question. And Mark Hooper's got the next one.
Basically, why do Liverpool tolerate Suarez after all his shenanigans and behaviour?
Get the grenade, take out the pin, throw it at Tony Evans.
You can get away with anything in football when you score goals. That's the bottom line. Suarez is a little bit more complex. He has a history. When he came to Liverpool, it's like there was no stroke of genius by Damien Comolli to sign him. He was being touted around a lot of other clubs. He was touted to Tottenham, and they didn't want him because of his background. And you know, he'd served a long ban for biting in the Netherlands. And then he came to Anfield, and then he was a rattling success and all that. And then you had the Evra incident. What disturbs me most about that is the way Liverpool fans rushed to defend what was clearly the indefensible. And those of us who basically tried to say that that it was an outrageous act were criticised heavily. Then the biting of Ivanovic, you wonder. I don't know. Can anyone explain it? The thing is, though, he has a great value on the transfer market, and when you score that many goals, you can get away with anything in football. It's probably the most. I mean, I don't know if it's the most, but it's one of the businesses where morality is thrown out the window really quickly. And you know what? As fans, I don't know what you think. Well, as fans, you can't criticise the way morality is thrown out the window when we rush to defend players who play for our clubs when they've done things which are clearly unconscionable. I mean, Chelsea fans with John Terry, Liverpool fans with Suarez. You know what? We defend the indefensible. So why do we wonder when clubs will put financial value on the indefensible?
Seen it so often in my career. Players getting away with absolute murder. Doing
not literally, surely.
No, well, not literally, but getting away with things that a lesser player wouldn't. The way the world really, isn't it? If you're successful and you're a talented striker, I don't think there's any doubt that Suarez is a huge ability as a player. The line in the sand gets crossed regularly, and like I said, I've probably played with 4 or 5 players in my career that have done things, and you just think, if that was me, I'd be gone.
I think there's, if you want to illustrate it better, is the American sports are better. The LA Raiders, Oakland Raiders, the guy who owned and ran them, his phrase was just win, baby, and he played in the Super Bowl, and one of the tight ends missed the flight, and so he turned up late, disciplined. He caught 2 passes to win the Super Bowl, and afterwards one of the journalists asked the owner, he said, "Are you going to fine him?" And he said, what the f*** does it matter? There's one, and winning is all people care about. at this level. And so Suarez, yeah, he'll get away with it, and he'll get away with it. He'll move to Real Madrid, and he'll get away with it there. As long as he's performing, he'll get away with it. And the second he isn't, boom, he's gone.
It's no different from the rock world, is it? You know, crazy bands who do things, who are selling huge records, and companies will stand by them. Hypocrisy's everywhere, and football's no different.
And people have been asking, you know, how can his teammates, you know, how would they ever welcome him back into the fold? And from the players I speak to, players don't mind, do they? So,
don't care, do they?
As long as a player, I mean, the great crimes, as far as a player is concerned, in terms of their teammates, are not giving your all in a match, not giving your all in training. They don't care about anything else. They don't care about what a player says in the media. They don't care about what what a player does in a transfer window. There's almost immunity during a transfer window because they're all pragmatists. They're all, you know, it's a business, it's a career.
And the thing is, there's quite a few people at Liverpool who are a bit disturbed the way the club have treated Suarez, who are like, they believe that he had a verbal agreement that he could go. They believe that like the clause in the contract should have meant he left. So there's a couple of players with their eyebrows raised who think they've shafted him. It's a difficult situation, and you know what? No fan in the world's going to support Suarez in this. He's a horrible little kid. You know what? But he may not be completely wrong in this issue. He was completely wrong in the Evra thing, and he was completely wrong in the Ivanovic thing. But on this one, he might have been shafted.
But does he deserve the benefit of the doubt?
What do the club deserve the benefit of the doubt? Again, if we go back to American football, there's a player with a great statement he made. He said, every time we say it's a sport, they say it's a business. Every time we say it's a business, they say it's a sport. You know what? Despite all the mythology, people say, oh, you can't make any money out of football, and the players' wages are ruining football. You know what? Players get shafted more than anything, and football's the only business you can asset strip on an annual basis, and people will come back for more.
And just on players and transfers, sometimes and I spoke to Tony about this. Lots of times, if you take Gareth Bale's situation, lots of times where players get forced into going, I want to leave, I want to hand in, the club are quite happy for that to happen. Very few times you have an owner go to a player, sit him down, have a meeting. What they do, they put them into a corner. And once Gareth Bale goes, I want to leave the football club, now the pressure's off the club because the fans are saying he wants to go. He's now the scapegoat. He's treated the club disrespectfully. Whatever reason say, the club can be quite often very happy to let it happen.
And that often happens when they actually want a player out. But they want to win the PR battle. It's Rafa Benitez has a saying he says all the time. He says, "Football is a lie, and football is a lie."
How can you believe him?
Lying Spanish.
And Kieran Poole with the last question of the night.
So, with the laws of the game 150 years old, what would you change or introduce, like a sin bin or something like that?
Is a sin bin what you would go for? Yeah. Sin bin. Or something else, Tony. What would you go for?
Do you know, one of the things is this game's endured for 150 years. It's worked. So let's change things. I actually wouldn't change. I wouldn't change any of the laws. I think we've tinkered with them so much, and I think we've seen from other sports when you're tinkering with them, you lose the spirit of the game. I'll tell you what I would do, because this is the home of the FA. The FA have no clear vision of how they need to take the game forward, and they're losing the financial and moral imperative to the Premier League on a yearly basis. What I would do is, if I was Greg Dyke, I would think about what happened here 150 years ago. I would think about it as a pub, and I would restyle the FA as the people's movement, and I would put the focus on fans, and I would try and harness popular feeling. And because you know what, they can do all their deals. They do the deals with their sponsors, but you look at their sponsors and their television deals, and the little tiddly ones compared to the Premier League. You can't fight the big battalions with their cash. like the FA are trying to do. It's the wrong way to do, and they'll get squeezed out and they'll eventually die. What you can do is guerrilla warfare, the war of the flea, harness people, fight at the lowest level, and that's what I'd do.
Cass, what would you change?
How can I beat that?
Well, you can't.
I'd love to see streakers again. Do miss them. I think probably the one thing that frustrates, and it's been mentioned many, many times, and I know television's got a lot to do with it. I do feel that referees after games, I'd love to see them come and explain themselves and be made to. You know, I don't mean to humiliate them in embarrassment about decisions, but sometimes just explain, because there's some decisions that happen in football games that we can't. A 40,000 crowd are in disbelief that a referee's made, and I think they should always be accountable.
Have you ever ref, Tony?
Yeah, I have done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not in a professional level,
Well,
obviously.
I mean, I
it's very difficult.
I refed when I was in the States, so it was $24 a game, so kind of professional. It was the only job I had at the time. Illegal immigrant. But you know, the thing is, what struck me is sometimes you just don't see things.
What would you change, Ollie?
These are in sort of declining interests of it's almost in reverse order of interest, but you know, if you talk about laws of the game, rules of the game, I think I think the throw-in is just a ridiculous rule. People should dribble the ball into play. People should be able to pass the ball into play or dribble the ball into play. I think the throw-in is just a bizarre anachronism. I cannot understand. You know,
are you insane?
No. Well, if you were making the rules of football here 150 years ago, would you say, right, and if the ball goes out of play, we shall do a throw-in? Yeah, well, why? Because a throw-in is hard. A throw-in is hard. You know, there's no technical. Well, there is a technical aspect, and Rory Delap, who this week dropped, this season has dropped 3 divisions to Burton Albion, is a very good exponent of it. But it takes the technique out of football.
Yeah. Do you think so?
I completely disagree. It's to award in effect some sort of free kick instead of a throw-in is completely inappropriate. I think it's it's quite there's a slight advantage in giving a throw-in, but it's nowhere near the great advantage of having a free kick where you can launch it into the box. Okay, you're going to get the occasional Rory Delap. But that's rare.
I prefer the idea of you could keep it. You could keep it short. You could. I mean, I would extend this to free kicks. You should be able to dribble a free kick. I do not see the point.
Dribble a free kick.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? Why not? Why not?
I was going to say, is that symptomatic of the way that the English play football, that we like the idea that you can get the ball into the penalty area as quickly as possible,
Yeah,
whereas
exactly.
actually the Spanish would see a kick in from the side as being get the ball back into play to the players to be able to work an opportunity.
Right. Here's the issue I have with throw-ins, right, is the stupidity of the English game, the British game and coaching. You throw the ball up the line, you expect to knock it on. And he's watched the NBA. The NBA, what they do, they actually throw the ball in, right? But they have set plays. There's a defensive coach and offensive coach, and they tell people what to do. And there's movements instead of a dumb throw-in. One of them. Compete for the first ball. Compete for the first ball, win the second ball. And that's the problem with throw-ins. Throw-ins, in essence, are not wrong. Throw-ins are great. Hutchinson at Chelsea, those arms, windmilling. I think of beauty.
I think what you've got to remember, it's only 20 years since they abolished the back, or they brought the back pass rule in.
And that was wrong.
I mean, what would Phil Neal have done? That was Phil Neal's stock in trade. All I can remember of football before I was about 10 or 11 was Phil Neal passing the ball back to Ray Clements, who held on to it for 30
people
seconds.
looked at it the wrong way. I watched Liverpool all the time in those days, and they passed the ball back to the keeper. It forced the opposition to come onto them and press them to try and get the ball back, especially if they were in the lead, and then boom, to go behind them. It wasn't a negative thing. It's like people are just looking at it the wrong way. They're all drunk.
Although the number of goals, the number of goals has gone up.
The number of goals has gone up because defenders are lost art. They don't teach people how to defend. It's rubbish. It's crap. Goals are killing football, except when you get them on the Times app.
Last word with Tony. Thank you very much indeed for listening. Thanks for downloading this. Thank you for everybody who's come and paid your hard-earned cash to sit and stare at 4 ugly mugs for an hour and a half. I do appreciate that. Gab Marcotti returns to the chair next week with the usual show. Thank you very much to Tony Cascarino, Tony Evans and Ollie Kay. Thank you very much indeed to you for coming. Goodbye.